Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and today is the 12th day of December 2020. And my title of my talk tonight is Prepping for the Future. Um, Many people that I've observed and talked to are not aware how serious the situation is here in the United States. That is, many people are losing their jobs. You understand that. And those jobs are not coming back. We have an issue also with deficits. That is, we are spending money that we no longer actually can pay for. That is, we're spending money that we're just spending it as though it's coming from from the sky. And the other thing simply is that what's occurring simply is the money is worthless. Money today, the cash money, is inflation. That is, what's occurring is that the money is not worth anything, folks. Paper money, because it has nothing backing it up anymore, silver or gold. And so, with this taking place, there's no support. And then also, what's transpiring is that the dollar has been pegged since the 1970s to oil, Middle Eastern oil. And we agreed with the Middle Eastern countries at that point under President Nixon to peg the dollar. That is, we would support them militarily and support them anything that happened there in case someone tried to destroy their country or whatever. Our military would be there. In fact, our military is there and has been there. The presence of the aircraft carriers are there. And if there's none there in a matter of 2 or 3 days, or a little longer maybe, there's going to be someone there somehow. And we do have what we call strong allies. That is, there are allies out here that what I would call United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and other ones like this. We don't have allies with Iraq or Iran. Iran is strongly tied to the Chinese and the Russians in support of them, where the hinge pits, where the problem could be at. So, but anyway, I'm kind of digressing. So, this is a time that you need to be buying food. I'm serious. You need to be buying food. And I'm not trying to give you any kind of fear mongering. It doesn't hurt to have food in your house. Long storage food, it doesn't. And you need to be able to have some type of way to have water that is clean water that you can drink. And so you need a water filtering system that's based upon gravity fed, which means you don't have to have any kind of power to it. And the water just gravity feeds. It goes down and you get the water is clean, and the upper part, the filters, take out what is the bad part. And you also need what I call the fluoride filters, because a lot of us have city water and we need to get fluoride out of our water, so which is a poison. Now, you need to be able to have a way to collect water also. You need to know how to collect it. Rainwater. Rainwater coming from the off your roof is a good way of storing it, collecting it. You can buy some of these what we call plastic blue, not dark blue, I guess a medium blue containers that are basically food grade, so that there's the chemical doesn't go into the residue of the water. That is that type of thing. To have those. And naturally, you need to have some type of backup system with the water filter, not only a Berkey water filter, but another water filtering system, maybe a travel Berkey that is a smaller deal in case you have to leave the area in case emergencies happen, or a backup system. And you need to have these filters also. You need to have them in your house so that you can use them in the future. You can use the dark black charcoal type of color ones. You can always clean them with what I call the 3M makes a product. I can't think of what it's called, but you rub against it and you can open up the pores and get it cleaned again. So the black ones can be reusable, but the fluoride ones cannot be reusable. Once they've used their life is gone, then you have to dispose of them. And there's no way of actually solving that problem. Some of the things I would tell people to do simply is not only that. So you have to have food and water. You need to have ways to basically be able to cook your own food without power. So you need to have a way to cook it either by propane, a way to quote unquote do it by what's the word? A wood stove, or some other way of doing it. You can actually have what I call some type of emergency generator to do this. And people say, well, why are you so serious about this? It's like, well, most people, I would say 90% of the people in this country aren't doing anything. Are not doing anything at all. Some people may have a month of food. They may have some water somewhere around. And you also need simply is a way, those are simply the basics. You also, if you're going to be a human being and healthy, you're going to have what I call some type of emergency aid systems. That is, you're not going to be able to run to the doctor in the hospital to get fixed. You're going to have to be able to try to eat good food. You have to be able to have what I call some way of either you have alcohol, have all kinds of items here, bandages, all these things in case something happens. Because you're not going to be able to just run down the road and do these things. Don't you see what's going on here? Don't you understand what the lockdowns are all about? There eventually won't be what I call a lockdown for a month or 2 months or a week or whatever. They will become permanent. And those who don't have jobs are going to be in worse shape because simply they're not going to have money. You always need to have emergency cash money no matter what. And that's just a rule of thumb, folks. You need to have emergency cash. You need to have emergency cash for at least 2 to 3 months for you to survive on. So whatever you pay, such and such, $1,000, whatever. I don't know what you do. That's your business. But you need to have at least for that for 3 months. You also need to have precious metals. And what do I mean by precious metal? Silver and gold. You need to have it in, be able to call in 1 ounce coins. You need to have it in. You also need to have it in different ways of basically what I call smaller accounts. You have to have what I call junk silver, which is just basically the old quarters that used to have silver in them from 64 on backwards, I think it is. Dimes used to have silver in it. Nickels used to have silver in it. All these coins used to have silver in it at one time. And that may be used something for bartering with someone, if you're neighbors or someone you can get something from. You need to also support what I call your farmers, your local farmers. If you can get eggs, dairy milk, meat from them, because you know that simply is that there are no chemicals in the food, such and such. And where I live in South Carolina simply is that it's called raw dairy. So it means simply is there's no pasteurization, there's no homogeneity, I guess you try to pronounce it. There's no drugs in the milk because the cows haven't been vaccinated because of that, because it's raw milk. There's just different things to think about here. This is not something you just sort of just put together. You got to put a list together. You also long-term food. And I don't know what the situation is in the past. I don't know what it is now, but I would try to get some type of long-term food some way. And things cost now far more than they do even 10 years ago when you bought the food, such and such. So these are things you need to critically think about. And do you have a place to go in case something happens and you need to go somewhere else? I call it a bug out bag. That is, you take certain things with you and you have a place to go and get away from whatever's happening, brewing in your area. And for God's sake, get out of the cities. Get out of the cities. This is where they're going to they're going to be more, that's where the lockdowns are going to take place more than anywhere else, is in cities. And if it's just like a fort mentality, simply is that when you have a castle and you close off the entrances, you can't get anything, because most of food is not grown in the cities, folks, unless someone's got a small garden. It's grown elsewhere in the countryside, and it has to be brought into the cities, that is, to the grocery stores. And if you're in the cities, then you're not going to be able to get that food, or you're going to be dependent upon the government in some way. And you don't want to be dependent upon the government. You don't want to do that at all. That's your worst case scenario. You see? And so with your understanding simply is this: you don't need to be in the cities. You also need to understand something else is critical. You need to be as debt-free as possible so that you don't owe anybody any money. So you're not in credit card debt, so that you're free from that. Because each thing is like a ball and chain. If you're not preparing yourself, that is food-wise, water-wise, all the things you need to be preparing for yourself, then guess what? You're dependent upon the government. That's what you are. And that's not what you want to be. And you need to have what I call herbs to deal with certain things that happen in your life. You need to have herbs set up to stay for your family. And you need to learn about herbs. You need to understand which herbs do whatsoever it does. In other words, you need to understand which herbs deal with certain issues. What herbs help out with the immune system? What herbs deal with what I call a sinus infection? What vitamins help out with certain things? You see, all these are critical for you to be self-governed, you're no longer dependent upon the government, but you are now your own sovereign, per se. You're no longer dependent upon others. And that's what you want to be. It's the most critical part you want. Can you live without electricity? Can you live without heat? All these things are critical. Can you, I know the simply is that I live in the South. So the weather is not quite as extreme in the wintertime, but in the summertime it gets hot. But always in the South, you can take off more clothes, per se. But the key is simply is people are spoiled here. And I would put myself in somewhat in that same category, that we all like air conditioning. Well, that may not happen. And there are ways of actually, when we go back to this, also with water, emergency water, you can always have water. You can get it from your toilet at the top if you have to. You see, you can also, like I said, you can have drums on the outside with rainwater. You also need to be growing food. You need to have a garden. You need to have what I call simply is growing it. And if you have people who are quote unquote you can depend upon, or they're honest, then you're in great shape. But we all don't have that situation, such and such. So we don't know what our neighbors are going to do. You see. And that's critical, because we don't know how they're going to react when they don't have anything on their table. You see. People do crazy things during crazy times. And so, and you just simply you need to have some way of protecting yourself too. You do. Now, I don't want these things to happen. No way in the world I want these things to take place in this country. But the point is simply is, if you're not prepared, you're going to be basically going down the river without a paddle. And you're not going to have any control of it. And you need to be able to, what I call simply is, if you do have neighbors that are thinking like you need to already build relationships with those people and work with them. Say, well, I'll do this for you. I've got I got apple in the back of my yard. I'll trade those for, something else you have. And you need to have ways of also having some ways of dealing with what I call having batteries to be able to recharge batteries so that you can be able to listen to what's going on in the news per se, because they're gonna cut that out too, folks. And I don't know how they're going to do it. You need to have some type of shortwave radio, be able to get foreign broadcasts so that you can hear what's going on somewhat, so that you can discern what's happening there or what's somewhat get bits and pieces. It won't be the whole truth, but you'll have to be able to discern what's happening in those countries that may state something what's happening in America, you see. And it would be good simply as you know another foreign language, you see. Shortwave radio, if you have even people who do what I call ham radio, which is ham radio is not shortwave, that is, it's on the same frequency somewhat, but ham radios with what we call ham operators that are actually in each town that actually communicate on USB upper sideband and also communicate on lower sideband. And you need to understand how to use a shortwave radio. You need to know how to have an antenna hooked up to it. All these things are pertinent for you to be aware. The problem is this simply is I don't think there's going to be an issue with police that is bothering you. I believe that your neighbors are going to be the greatest threat to you. That's going to be key, because you're not going to be able to call the police or whatever, because they're out here trying to put out other fires that are far more serious than what's happening in your neighborhood. In fact, I know that's what they do. They've already been told that. They ignore such and things. A car accident, such and such, is not pertinent to something else that's taking place in the city. If people are marching or whatever, creating a problem in your city or whatever, So it's critical that you understand that you need to be prepared. And most people say, well, I don't want to spend that money or whatever. I don't have that money. Well, you need to be as best prepared as possible. And it doesn't hurt to grow a garden. It doesn't hurt to put up what I call fruit trees. It doesn't hurt to plant those trees, because you may get fruit out of those trees. It may be beneficial to you to stay alive. Is this fear porn? No, this is not fear porn. We know that there are over 100,000 restaurants, I think it is, that have lost, they're no longer open here in the United States. Now think about people who work there. And those are what I call low paying jobs, folks. Those are not what you call really good jobs. And so what's transpiring here is you're going to have to make some decisions. You're going to have to make good decisions. And you're going to have to understand simply is you don't want to keep that money. If you've got cash money, you don't want it to be all in the bank. You want your eggs to be diversified. You want to have your eggs not in one basket. You want them in different places, whatever it may be. Food is one of those major things, and water is one of them too. It isn't, you can have $10,000, big deal. If you don't have food and water, it don't mean anything, because you're not going to be able to buy it. You see, there won't be anything. There may be a black market, but you won't be able to get those things you really need. Sometimes what I think is simply is people have told me that some of the big things that are going to be needed in the black market or you can get are going to be like cigarettes, probably toilet paper, some other little items, probably like parodies or something of that nature, for a radio or whatever. But there's the black market, that's going to take place too. But people are not going to take what I call eventually take cash money. They're not. They're going to take something of value. Now, you may be able to, quote unquote, say, I'll exchange you with what, I've got some potatoes here or whatever you got, fruit, whatever, and exchange it for something else. But they're not going to eventually pay for money. So if there's any questions, you're welcome to ask questions. But you need to educate yourself. You need to make it a priority in your life to do these things, because simply is most of us are alone. I'm alone. I don't have anybody here. It's me. The only person that's going to be able to do this is going to be me. And I live in the South. Okay. And there are more people here prepared in the South and probably in the Midwest than there are in the Northeast and in the West. I mean, there are more people prepping in the Midwest and the South than they are in the Midwest. I'm sorry, in the West and the Northeast. Most people in the Northeast and the West are just, they're flying blindly into a mountain in an airplane. They don't have any idea what they're doing because most are not prepared. So, and then others are saying, well, something might happen and we may leave here. Well, that's a possibility, but you don't know exactly that completely neither. So you have to be prepared in the best way you do. And you need to simply is to write a list of what things you have and what you don't have, and then gradually buy those things. We're running out of time because if Biden becomes the president, he's already made it very clear what he's going to do. He's going to shut the country down in order to destroy the last few jobs here. And not only that, simply is it's going to allow the government to be able to justify what I call giving certain things to only certain people. And they have food, but they're going to use that as a weapon. They're going to use that as a weapon to keep you in alignment to the government. And if you're not in that situation, you don't want to be in that situation. You see? And I don't know. I notice simply is this is not just going to be the United States, neither. This is going to happen worldwide. It all has to collapse. It all has to come apart because there's no way it's feasible it's going to hold on to itself. There's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that bankers owe. They don't have it. You see, the bankers have lied to the people for over 100 years, 150 years here in this country, and destroyed what we call good money. And now it simply is just paper money. And I can tell you in history, for example, in Zimbabwe, which is the former country of Rhodesia, I'm a poli-sci major and a history major. And when I was going to college, they were fighting the war in Rhodesia, which became eventually Zimbabwe because they broke away. But Rhodesia, at the point when I studied in college in the area of political science, Rhodesia was the bread basket of all South Africa. That included South Africa, the country. So it provided food for Mozambique, provided food for Zambia, food for South Africans, food for all those countries. And once they went through what they call the civil war that took place there, and eventually there were British troops there at one time fighting to preserve Rhodesia. And if you know a little clue, simply Rhodesia is named after Cecil Rhodes, who was involved in Southern Africa in the diamond and gold and silver areas. And that's why you hear the word Rhodes Scholar. That's named after him, Cecil Rhodes, who was a philanthropist, a investor, and actually was in Southern Africa in these times. He was there, and he exploited the people there, no doubt about that. And also in one other country, probably be Namibia, which is in the western part of South Africa. And this country, now Zimbabwe is a completely broke country now. They finally got rid of the leader there, and I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Nothing but a dictator. And guess who's going down the same path? That's right. South Africa is doing the same thing. They're going to run their farmers out. In fact, some have been brutally killed because guess what? Because of the wrong color of skin. That's why people kill people. Isn't that crazy? People hate people because of their color of the skin. Has nothing to do with their character or anything of that nature. That's how ignorant people are. They blame other people of colors of skin. So South Africa is going the same deal, going down the same path that Zimbabwe did. Now, when I say Zimbabwe, how bad was things there? It got so bad that the inflation rate was over 1,000% a year. So things were, one time is worth only you pay $1 for, and then the next thing you know is $2, and the next thing you know is $4. Next thing you know is $8. Continues upward, and no wonder the country's broke. And I know that the Voice of America has been operating there. That not Voice America, yeah, Voice of America was operating on shortwave frequency, beaming signals into Zimbabwe to get people to hear the news, what was going on within their own country, because basically the leader there was not going to allow them to get the truth out. You see, so Voice of America was actually shooting signals back in with a shortwave radio. And you say, well, that's not, it couldn't happen here. How do you know it's not going to happen here? Think about the people in Russia that said that it wouldn't happen there. What about the people in Germany? They didn't think it was going to happen there. What took place in the Second World War, all the destruction. So it's important that you be pertinent about these things and write a list of all the things you need to have. You got still time if you would see and do this. But if you don't do anything, then it's your own damn fault. It's your own fault because you're not doing anything about it and you're thinking, oh, it's going to get better. It's not going to get better, folks. It's not. This whole thing, this fiasco of what I call this COVID-19 is a true lie that people are destroying their own selves by believing in this whole mask thing and not dealing with reality. That's what this is all about. It's a psyop. It's a psychological warfare upon the American people. That's what you call a psyop. We have been doing this for over 100 years in other foreign countries. So it worked so well in those countries, they're using it within their own country now here in America. That's why it's a psyop, psychological operation. So this is just to make you aware. Again, like I said, I'm not trying to scare you, but it's pertinent you begin to do something. You still have the opportunity to go to the grocery stores. You have opportunities to get water. You have opportunities to get a Berkey water filtering system. You have opportunities to get medicine. You see, you have opportunities to get herbs. All these things are pertinent for you to do. And if you have a different way of cooking, you can cook. You can use a propane deal. We used to do that when we went camping when I was younger. We camped outside. We had a propane burner, such and such. You can still get those. You can still buy the larger, what I call I guess it's 25-pound, and run a hose to these things like this so you can always cook on propane. These are desperate times, folks. These are desperate times. And so I hope that what I shared tonight with you, that you would take it, in a way that make you aware. If I know this information, it's only to help others. It's not to make myself better than anybody else. This is important for you to understand. And some of the things you need to do simply is, can you eat off certain foods? Because you're not going to, some of us are not going to be able to eat rice and beans every day. So you're going to have to think of ways, creative ways, especially women, to how to cook these things, because we all get tired of eating certain things that, think about Thanksgiving, like you have turkey and dressing. Well, eventually within about a week, people are tired of turkey and dressing. You see, so you got to understand that about your own self. So, okay. I appreciate you listening and wish you a good night and take care.